Joining us now, Admiral James Lyons, retired. We call him Ace Lyons, retired Admiral of the United States Navy who served as commander of the U.S. Pacific Fleet from 1985 to 1987. He's also a commentator, a writer, and he's been involved in just about everything going on, and also a major critic of President Barack Obama's foreign policy, which he can criticize because he's retired now. Ace Lyons, Admiral Lyons, good to have you with us, sir. Good to have you back.
Nice to be with you, John, and your listeners.
Now, are you fired up about Mad Dog Mattis or what?
He's certainly got to be a lot better than the last four we had.
Well, that's pretty succinct. Who do you think Trump should pick as Secretary of State?
Well, because I like John Bolton, and who I think is eminently qualified for that position. I certainly would never consider Governor Romney for that position in view of the personal attacks as one aspect. Plus, I don't think he's qualified for the job.
Right. I mean, he doesn't really have any foreign policy experience other than
exactly
buying up companies and shipping their jobs overseas and then putting his money in the Cayman Islands, right? That's about the extent
of it. On the
other
hand, I'd have no problem with Newt Gingrich as Secretary of State.
I think he'd be excellent. I just had him on my show, and he just knows everything that's going on. Okay, let's get to a couple of hot issues, Admiral Ace Lyons. Let's get to the topic of the day here seems to be the State Department all in a tizzy over the fact that President-elect Trump called the president of Taiwan. This is a freely elected president. They have a democratic governance there. We have a treaty with them. If they get attacked, we have to respond, defend them. We give them hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in supporting their defense. We protect them, if you will. What is the problem with just picking up the phone and having a dialogue with them?
Look, this is all hoopla, is pure nonsense. We're never going. Since when do we let Beijing dictate who the current president-elect of the United States can talk to or not talk to? This is pure nonsense. He can talk to whoever he wants. And even if it goes back to the Carter administration, which a number of issues I never agreed with what they did, including turning over the Panama Canal. But that's a separate issue.
Well, look, you basically feel that President-elect Trump had every right to call up the Taiwanese government, the president, and say whatever he had to say, right? I mean,
exactly.
It shouldn't be dictated by what Beijing thinks when they basically do whatever they please anyway, right?
Exactly.
All right, now let's get to Japan, right? Relations good there. They've gotten better. Their prime minister going to visit Pearl Harbor in December, meeting President Obama there. Obama visited Hiroshima, I think, in 2015.
Right.
So you think that makes sense? You think it was time for them finally to visit Pearl Harbor?
Oh, absolutely. They're long overdue.
All right, let's get to the Syrian situation.
In fact, I did an op-ed that ran today in the Washington Times on the 75th anniversary of the Pearl Harbor attack. And the basic theme of it is that we need to restore the ranks honor of Admiral Kimmel and General Short, since they were made scapegoats. They were denied the key intelligence information that was available to only 10 people in Washington and deliberately hung out to dry.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unconscionable what we've done to them.
So if you were advising President-elect Trump on this issue, Admiral Lyons, what would your counsel be?
My counsel would be, as I've said in my op-ed, these two honorable people who were doing the job they were sent out to do were then held out, were denied the key intelligence information which would have alerted them to the breakdown in the diplomatic relations that were ongoing between us and Japan, because when President Roosevelt saw the one message that he said, where they said they're terminating negotiations, he himself said this means war. None of that information was passed to Kimmel or Short. And furthermore, the information that was passed to him was all in error, such that there are no torpedoes that can be dropped in the shallow water of Pearl Harbor, and all of this nonsense when the British did it in Taranto when they destroyed the Italian Mediterranean fleet. Mm-hmm. So my counsel would be, let's, as a matter of honor, mm-hmm. let's restore their ranks, their honor, and their credibility. It's the right thing for the Army, the Navy, and the country to do.
Admiral Lyons, having studied this issue as a student of history for some time in your career, are you of the opinion that President Roosevelt at the time had the information, was pretty sure that this attack was imminent, and didn't do anything to stop it or alert any of our military personnel? Because at the end of the day, that was really the only way he was going to get the United States in the war.
Yeah, well, there were other people, Marshall, General Marshall, Admiral Stark, who was the Chief of Naval Operations, and Admiral Richmond Kelly Turner. It was Turner who assumed the responsibility in the summer of 41 to distribute the intelligence we were getting from, it was called the MAGIC, the decrypted codes of the diplomatic codes from Japan. And both Marshall and Stark knew everything. And at times, they denied Roosevelt and Cordell Hull, the Secretary of State, information from these decrypts up to 4 months at a time because they didn't trust the people around them. And, of course, this was so tightly held, it was really a built-in method for disaster, which is exactly what occurred. But nonetheless, Stark and Turner and Marshall should have picked up the phone call, alerted those commanders in Hawaii, because this is tactical intelligence. Mm-hmm. It's there for the instant. You either use it or you lose it. Mm-hmm. And we lost it. Mm-hmm. And the idea, they finally sent out a telegram from Western Union, and it finally gets to Admiral Kimmel 8 hours after the attack. I mean, this is unconscionable. And the inquiry that was held by Supreme Court Justice Owen Roberts was just unconscionable. The main purpose was to protect the Washington, quote, elite at that time and hang out Kimmel and Short as scapegoats. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This has got to be corrected. It has gone on for too long. In fact, in 1944, both Congress, a congressional inquiry, and everybody else cleared Kimmel and Short, and nobody has had the professional guts to go ahead and take the next step. This is something the Trump campaign and President-elect Trump should do.
Just basically set history straight as to what really went down with that invasion. And like you mentioned, which was...
one other thing I want to tell you, John. One of those, there were several purple machines that were manufactured. 3 of them went to Churchill, to the Army, to the Navy, and one was sent to MacArthur out in the Philippines for his use. And we never knew what use he made of it. And furthermore, he leaves all the Far East Air Force sitting on the runway. And he had 9 hours advance notice of the attack on Pearl Harbor, and he never did anything. He let the aircraft sit there, and they all got destroyed. He was never held accountable for that, although he did subsequently do a lot of fine operations in the Western Pacific.
So define, Admiral Lyons, what you mean when you said purple machines. Not all of our audience knows what that means.
Well, that's the decrypt machines that were manufactured by the Navy intelligence. And, of course, we never knew I don't know at this point, I'm not sure we'll ever know, whether we had ever broken the Japanese Naval Code, and it's JN-25 is what the designation was, prior to the Pearl Harbor attack. That's an unknown. We just don't know about it.
Right. Now, we did have it afterwards because that's how remember we shot down the plane with one of the high-level Japanese commanders on it.
Yeah,
because
Yamamoto.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, because we knew then what exactly.
Yeah, well, that's because we were still breaking that code. This is after Pearl Harbor.
Right. So
right.
The question is, we don't know if we had it before Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
Right. And then we broke the German code also around the same time, and they had a name for that. It always escapes.
Ignemino.
That's right. Something like that. EGMIM, but we broke that, so we had all that. We had all that going on.
Venoma. Yeah.
Now, let's get Admiral Lyons at a couple more minutes. Let's get to, we've been talking about this all day. The Obama administration is just fascinating to me. The Obama administration now says over the weekend, we really can't leave Iraq, even after we push ISIS out, that the next administration has to deal with the fact that we're going to have a presence, a military presence in Iraq. Basically, he said, for their foreseeable future or in perpetuity. I don't know what this means. 10,000 troops, 200,000, he says, but in perpetuity. This is, of course, the exact opposite of what Obama said to get elected in 2008. Are we ever going to get out of Iraq?
Well, let me get the first thing, in my view, and I did an op-ed on this a week ago, they've got to identify our strategic vital objectives, and particularly in the Middle East, which is the most unstable region in the world. And for example, to me, we have no strategic vital interest in Afghanistan, and we should stop wasting our national treasure there. There is nothing there we can do with a corrupt tribal society. That's number one. Our principal objectives in the Middle East, as I see them, preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. That's number one. Number two is the removal of the illegitimate Iranian theocracy. Mm-hmm. That's number two. Number three, the protection and continued support of our good ally, Israel, and our continued relationship with Egypt, and ensuring that the strategic waterways remain open. That's the Persian Gulf and the Straits of Hormuz and the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb Straits. You know, if you, in other words, you need to scope this thing down to what is absolutely vital. We just can't continue to willy-nilly expend our national treasure. Now, whatever we do in the Syrian-Iraq region, and by the way, I would hope they would support a free and democratic establishment of Kurdistan for the Kurds. Mm-hmm. They've been valuable, loyal allies, and they deserve this opportunity. Mm-hmm. With regard to the ongoing offensive operations in Syria and Iraq, the bottom line is you don't want to do anything that enhances the expansion of the Iranian crescent, okay?
Right.
So you don't want to go in and be killing off, quote, forces that are opposed to Assad, and thereby you enhance what the Iranians and the Hezbollah and Hamas are doing there. Mm-hmm. So it's a delicate line that has to be walked. And what we've done, you know, going back before, what we've done in Iraq was really unconscionable. Mm-hmm. What we did is set up a puppet state for Iran. Iran controls Iraq. They've taken their Shiite militias. They're now integrated into the Iraqi military as an element in their force. And what's going on there is unconscionable. In my view, when people ask me, what do I think about Iraq, I tell them it's one of the greatest strategic mistakes we ever made.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly for not having taken care of the Iranian problem before we went ahead with that. I mean, what we did, we destroyed the Sunni-Shia balance. We should not be involved in this sectarian Sunni-Shia war that has gone on for over 1,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
My view is let them kill each other off,
right.
number one. And while I'm at that, I might add, we should not embrace anything that approaches the failed coin strategy, which has cost the lives and devastating injuries to many of our military personnel. This idea we had to go out and march without a protected vest or a blast diagram to show how we want to integrate and win the hearts and minds of the local, what pure nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
And my view is when you want to win their hearts and minds, there's one way you do it. In the Middle East, there's only one thing that counts. It's street respect. And the way you get street respect, you kill them into submission. And once you do that, I guarantee you the hearts and minds will follow.
Because the alternative to that is death.
Right.
Simple.
Right.
As that. All right, Admiral Lyons. Hey, for more information, you can go to Admiral Lyons' website, which is Lion LLC.
www.lionllc.com.
LionLLC.com. Admiral, I'm out of time for this segment. We're going to try to get you back on because we've got a lot more questions we want to get your input on. I thank you for joining us today. We'll be in touch to see what time might work on Tuesday. As always, sir, it's an honor to have you on. Thank you so much.
Great to be with you and your audience, John.